My wife, Janet, has been leaving the milk out again. I know that doesn't sound like much. I know it sounds like a complaint from a particularly obsessive neat freak or maybe a passive-aggressive jab at a spouse's forgetfulness. But it's not about the milk. It's about what happens after the milk is left out. We live in a quiet development on the edge of Ridgemont, a town that aging real estate agents describe as established. Our houses were all built in the mid-90s, with brick facades and two-car garages and lawns that look like green velvet until you get up close and see the crabgrass. The sort of place where the most exciting thing to happen in a decade was a dispute over a fence line on Maple Street. 3 weeks ago, I came down for my morning coffee and found a half-gallon of whole milk sitting on the counter, the white plastic cap resting next to it like a tiny fallen astronaut. The carton was cool, not cold. Room temperature. I sighed, Janet's name a familiar groan on my breath as I tipped the milk down the drain. She'd been doing this more and more, small forgetful things, leaving her keys in the door, forgetting to turn the porch light off. I didn't think anything of it, not then. But I started noticing a pattern, not just with the milk, with the butter dish, with the package of ground beef, with a carton of eggs. Every other day or so, something that belonged in the refrigerator would be sitting out on the kitchen island, bathed in the warm, dusty light of the morning sun. It was as if the refrigerator had quietly vomited a single item during the night, a tiny, cold sacrifice to the heat of the day. I confronted Janet about it for the first time a week and a half ago. She was standing at the sink, rinsing a coffee cup. Her hair was tied back in a loose bun. She didn't turn around. "Hun," I said, holding up the butter dish, the butter inside a soft yellow smear. "We talked about this, it spoils." She didn't respond for a long moment. The water ran. Then she spoke, her voice thin and distant, like she was talking to someone standing right next to her but not quite on the same plane. "I didn't do it." I laughed, a short, dismissive sound. "Well, the milk fairies aren't breaking into our house just to spoil our dairy." She turned off the water. Her shoulders under her thin bathrobe were rigid. "I know I didn't do it, Mark." She turned to face me, and her eyes had that look people get when they're telling a truth so absolute it terrifies them. "It's not me." She had no history of sleepwalking. We'd been married for 15 years. I would have known. I walked with her to the refrigerator and opened the door. The hum of the compressor was a low, steady drone. The interior felt normal. The little light was on. But as I stood there, a cold finger of air washed over my face, and I realized something was out of place. There was a Tupperware container on the top shelf. I didn't recognize it. It was full of a murky, yellowish liquid with thick, ropey things floating in it, like cooked pasta but paler. It didn't smell like anything. It just sat there, a silent, forgotten jar in the back. I asked Janet what it was. She looked at it, her face pale in the refrigerator's ghastly light. "I don't know," she whispered. "I've never seen it before." That was the moment the warm, safe shell of our suburban life cracked. I threw the Tupperware away, still unopened, tied up in 3 plastic grocery bags and placed in the outside bin. I told myself Janet must have made some kind of weird broth, or maybe I'd bought it without remembering. My memory isn't perfect, but the explanation felt like a Band-Aid on a wound that needed stitches. The items kept appearing, not just on the counter, on the nightstand, on the back porch railing. A stick of butter sweating in the morning dew. An open can of tuna, its oily brine pooling in a silver ring on the wood. 3 chicken thighs still in their styrofoam tray, sitting on the welcome mat outside our front door. The texture of the air in our house started to change. It wasn't just warm or cool. It was thick, gummy, heavy in a way that made you want to lie down. The light seemed wrong, too. The mornings were too bright, a stark, clinical white that made the shadows under the furniture look like black holes. The nights were too dark, the street lamps outside seeming to only cast a weak, yellowish smear that didn't reach the windows. 2 nights ago, I couldn't sleep. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the house. The refrigerator compressor kicked on in the kitchen. Then it kicked off. A minute later, it kicked on again. It cycled like that for an hour, a nervous, a rhythmic heartbeat. I finally got up. I decided I was going to take a photo of the refrigerator door the moment I woke up. Catch the culprit on film, even if the culprit was just the ghost of my own sleep-deprived brain. I padded down the hall in my bare feet. The floor felt gritty under my toes, like it had been sprinkled with fine sand. The kitchen was dark. The little green light on the microwave was the only illumination, glowing like a tiny, trapped firefly. I walked to the refrigerator, my hand already out to grab the handle. I didn't touch it because the refrigerator door was open. It was open about 6 inches, a cold slab of white in the darkness. A pale, milky light spilled out across the linoleum, illuminating the baseboards. And from inside that gap I heard a sound, not the compressor, not the fan, a whisper. It was soft, sibilant. Like dry leaves scraping across concrete. I could not make out words, but I understood the tone. It was a tone of hunger, of patient, clinical anticipation. It was the sound of something breathing in the cold, something that was not meant to be in the light or the warmth. I didn't move. I couldn't. My breath hitched in my throat. The whispering stopped. In the silence, I heard a new sound. A wet, sucking glug, like someone taking a long, slow drink of syrup at the bottom of a bottle. It came from the top shelf, from where that strange Tupperware had been. The refrigerator door began to swing shut slowly on its own. The magnetic seal caught with a soft, decisive click. I stood there in the dark kitchen, my heart a trapped bird in my ribs, until the first gray light of dawn crept through the blinds. I did not open the refrigerator. I did not go back to the bedroom. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the white, silent box until Janet came down and asked me why I was up so early. I told her nothing. I looked at her kind, worried face, and for the first time in 15 years, I was afraid of her. Not of her hurting me, but of the thing she was carrying, the thing that was leaving offerings. Because I realized it wasn't her making the offerings. It was something that lived in the coldest part of our house, something that was now being fed. Yesterday, I came home from work. The house was quiet. The air was that thick, coiled quality again. I made a point not to look at the refrigerator. I went to the living room and saw a new object sitting on the coffee table. It was a glass, our good water glasses from the wedding registry, the ones with the little etched leaves on the side. It was full of something, a pale, milky liquid. It was cold to the touch. A single bead of condensation slid down the side of the glass, and in the bottom of the glass, floating in that pale liquid, was a single human fingernail. It was clean, clipped, familiar. It had a crescent of pale peach polish on it, Janet's nail polish, the color she'd been wearing for a week. I looked at my wife's hands. Her fingernails were beautifully manicured. Perfect. All 10, except for one. The nail on her right index finger was jagged, torn, and raw at the cuticle. Like it had been ripped away. That's when I understood. The food isn't being stolen from the fridge to be spoiled. It's being taken to feed something. And the payment, the offering, it's from Janet. The milk isn't the problem. The milk is the lure. Tonight, I'm going to do something I should have done weeks ago. I'm going to stay up. I'm going to watch the refrigerator. I'm going to see what happens when the lights go out. I'm not calling the police. I'm not telling Janet. I have to see it. I have a steak knife on the coffee table next to me. And I'm tired of being scared. I want to know what lives in the cold machine. I think I can hear it humming now, not the compressor, a different hum, a lower one, a waiting one. The refrigerator light just flickered on in the other room. The door is closed. I checked. I know it's closed. I can see the seal from here. The little black rubber lip is pressed tight against the white frame. It is closed, but I can hear the sound of my wife's water glass, the one with the nail inside it, sliding across the kitchen counter all by itself. It's heading for the refrigerator. I'm going to go see what opens the door.